Fun fact, you know that you can create lists on Twitter? This actually made it easier to exclusively access all of the important accounts that I care about and ignore all the bad ones. But anyway, remember my last video? So I was asked to react to a video that Norbert was planning on uploading, and it got published sooner than I thought. If you want to check it out, I'll put a link in the description, but it's basically about the idea that depending on your economic stance, whether it's capitalism or socialism, your opinion on how companies run themselves and the practices they commit will vary in terms of how acceptable you think they are. Now, I'm just gonna go ahead and say up front that I'm not going to share my opinion on the topic that inspired his video. I don't really care about Blue Sky Studios shutting down, and my opinions on business management and fan reaction have already been shared in the past. That the only thing I could add into this conversation would be for me to reveal whether or not I'm a capitalist or a socialist, which answering that is a bit tricky. What I actually want to do in this video is provide more context and clarification on the subject in question. Norbert said at the beginning of the video that he's not an expert on economics, and he would appreciate if there was anyone with experience on that field that could give their own input. And since I have actually studied economics, I figured why the hell not? Okay, so one thing I'd like to establish first, and I think this is something that everybody kind of already knows already, but just in case, there's a difference between free market and capitalism. Free market just simply means an economic system where the commerce is free of government intervention. Meanwhile, capitalism is the regime defined by private agents having ownership of capital goods, which can be a wide range of assets with their own established values. Of course, both of them do intertwine since you need free market in order for capitalism to exist. Although one thing worth noting is that true free market is actually pretty rare, if not completely non-existent. For the longest time, public entities that are government owned have always played a role in the market, even in countries that adapt a capitalist system. You can even see this in something as simple as the trade market. Over the centuries, countries have always been pretty edgy with how they go about monitoring international trades. Hell, there was even a time when a lot of European countries adapted something called mercantilism, which is basically a strategy to maximize as many exports as they could and downplay as many imports. It was a strategy to profit from a bunch of national products being sold to the outside, while also minimizing their expenditure through imports, creating a net positive. Now, this did not last forever. Eventually, people started to realize that this causes a lot of tension between countries, and we also started to see a rise of a couple of theories like comparative advantage, the Heckscher-Ohlin model, and some other stuff that supported the idea that an open international trade market is actually more beneficial even to countries with less resources. So after that, governments started to embrace open trades a bit more, but even then, they imposed shit like tariffs, quotas, subsidiaries, and other bullshit in order to protect themselves from imposing and threatening foreign companies taking over the national market, and also for a little bit of monetary gain. I bring all of this up because I think the main point Norbert was trying to make was that there are a lot of parallels drawn between the way someone might be more accepting of questionable business decisions and how a capitalist society allows market agents to perform commerce however way they want. And while I think it's a good observation, I think there is some debate to be had in terms of how far in the laissez-faire attitude we're willing to open ourselves up to. Because if I had to offer my opinion just for once, I think there is some argument to be made for why monitoring the market in a capitalist society is important. In the case of the animation industry, my biggest fear is monopoly. Now, in Norbert's video, he did make the argument that a limited number of dominated companies applies to almost every market, and that it's a byproduct of capitalism that we have to accept. And while this might be empirically true on some level, I also think this is one of the reasons why I personally question capitalism as an economic system. The thing is, monopolies, duopolies, and oligopolies are pretty bad. They're actually not at all ideal to the appeal of free market, which is meant to encourage a competitive commerce. And when you have a market predominantly dominated by a few companies, it puts a hindrance on innovation. I mean, just look at EA Sports games. It diminishes the value of public demand. There are a lot of anti-consumer practices that can rise from it, like price discrimination, exclusive dealings, artificial scarcity, and a bunch of other scummy practices that are easy to abuse when you don't have competition. It's why you see a lot of regulations set in place by the government, but I mean, even then, those could end up becoming worthless anyway when you have massive corporations that can buy out lobbyists and make corrupt deals with government figures. I mean, look no further than Disney, that with the power of the piggy bank, they managed to royally fuck up and change copyright laws as a result of them fighting to hold the rights of Mickey Mouse, which should have expired fucking billions of years ago. There are also more extreme examples I could give of laissez-faire being a questionable theory, but but a lot of it is irrelevant to this topic anyway. Now, does that mean that I side with the socialist viewpoint? To be honest, I haven't done enough research on socialism to be sure if it's a system I fully subscribe to, but do I think that letting companies do whatever they want in an open capitalist market is dangerous? Yes. Yes, I do. Although I do wonder why people seem to ignore other animation studios out there. So you know what, fuck it. Since everyone is crying about Disney taking over animation in America, let me promote something from The Boys here in Portugal. There's an animator called Regina Pessoa who has released some cool shorts such as A Tragic Story with a Happy Ending and Callie the Little Vampire. There you go, look after that and find more people like her. There's more to animation than just the big giants like Disney and DreamWorks. If you start to feel a little bit dissatisfied, don't feel shy to search for indie projects. I know we're already kind of living in an oligopoly, but let's at least support what we can. Anyway, Papa Dance out.